Hello everyone, welcome back to fraudonthetele. Legend of Vox Machina Season 1 is over. Wow, what a crazy sentence to say. When I think back 6 years ago, I was just watching these guys play on the Geek and Sundry set. Never did I think it was gonna come this far. In this video, I will be reviewing Season 1 of the Legend of Vox Machina. We'll be talking about what I liked, what I didn't like, the challenges of adapting a D&D campaign into an animation setting, and was the show worth somewhere close to 750 grand per episode. As always, if you enjoyed the video and learned something new, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get into it, shall we? So, I have a confession to make. If you watch some of my other Legend of Vox Machina content, you'd probably know this, but I'm a bit of a Critical Role fan. I've watched basically every episode of the campaign, most of them live. I was lucky enough to discover Critical Role in Geek and Sundry. After Critical Role, I'd only had like 3 live episodes. Because of this, to say that I'm biased is, well, a bit of an understatement. In order to remedy this problem, I've reached out to some of my friends and people I trust who have no idea really anything about Critical Role and Legend of Vox Machina. I've asked them to watch the show. Many of the critiques in this video are taken from this perspective of a new fan, as I think that's where most of the problems can lie for the Legend of Vox Machina. Oh, I guess I should probably make this clear now. This video's primary focus is not on plot summary or plot review. So, if it's a story review you want, go check out all our episode breakdowns, click above. We should really start from the beginning then. The Legend of Vox Machina is an animated series based off the Dungeons & Dragons campaign, Critical Role, which is streamed live on Twitch featuring a group of friends who happen to be famous voice actors. The story follows a ragtag group of mercenaries, Vox Machina, on their epic adventure. Simple question though, do you need to know any of this to enjoy the show? No! While the show is definitely geared towards the Critical Role superfan, I believe that it's very possible for new viewers to enjoy the show and get invested in the characters without any knowledge. However, The Legend of Vox Machina does suffer from the same problems any show or movie that has been adapted from a large source material will suffer from. How do we convey all this knowledge, character motivation, background, backstory, everything really in a short animated show? How do you hook someone who has no idea what the fuck is happening? Now, it's a tough thing to do. Critical Role fans come into the series with full knowledge of the plot and story beats, as well as an in-depth understanding of character stories, backgrounds, personalities, as well as party dynamics. You can see the writers had a bit of an uphill battle. How do we all convey all this information, specifically character personality and motivation, all which have been fleshed out over hundreds of hours of Critical Role programming in about 25 minutes. The Legend of Vox Machina attempts to do this within the first 5 minutes of the show, actually, with the introduction of our heroes. This tavern brawl scene is actually genius in my opinion, as in a series of minutes the audience is flooded with information about our heroes. Keyleth is a socially awkward lightweight with magical druid powers. Percy is a calm, collected noble who wields a firearm. Vax and Veth are the smooth half-elf twins, one wielding a bow, the other daggers. Scanlan, the horny gnome bard, Grog, the brutal but not so bright Goliath, and Pike, the at times not so holy gnome cleric. Legend of Vox Machina also attempts to remedy this problem with the pacing of Season 1, essentially splitting it into 2 parts, episodes 1 through 3, and then episodes 4 to 12. Episodes 1 to 3 function as a kind of setup arc to the rest of the season, call to action if you will. Not only do these episodes flesh out each character and their dynamic with one another, they also function to give background on the dealings of the world these characters exist in. In addition, these episodes give time for character progression as we see our heroes engage in, well, a classic hero's journey archetype. When I recommend this show to new fans, I try to make it very clear to them to try to give it at least 3 episodes, as the story really takes off once we enter the Briarwood arc. These 3 episodes, though, are so important for new fans, as I found that newcomers to the series don't seem to make it past the first 3. That's a shame considering how amazing the Briarwood arc is. It contains the best fight scenes, animated scenes in general, art, character lines, you name it really. One of the best things I think the show does is capture the same party dynamic and group feeling that Vox Machina had in the D&D campaign. It's more than just a character dynamic thing, because these characters are played by a real-life group of friends. One of the most interesting critiques a friend of mine gave me, who had little to no info about Critical Role, said, "I feel like it's trying really hard to be lay epic random. It feels like they will just stick random lewd stuff in to get a laugh, or just go off on random tangents." I found this take really funny at first, but then I realized he's never played D&D before. And guess what? D&D at times is fucking random. Unlike many other shows and movies that have been adapted from some other different source material, be it a book, manga, you get it, the story a D&D campaign tells, and the way it tells it, is vastly different. Primarily because, well, at times, literally dice decide your fate. so anything could potentially happen. Things are almost guaranteed to go off the rails. Look no farther than the Jenga scene. As well, D&D campaigns are often generally extremely lighthearted in nature, as the line between player and character constantly blurs. Hence why it's not too surprising Legend of Vox Machina oftentimes has some very lewd moments or humor that is extremely crass and just seems to come out of nowhere. The show, while doing its best to be friendly towards new viewers who know nothing about D&D, let alone Critical Role, ultimately was made for the hardcore fan. And when you consider the fact that the money spent to make this show into a reality came from the community, it starts to make a lot more sense. For those of you who may not know, a few years ago, the Critical Role team ran a Kickstarter for an initial goal of creating a one-off animated episodes of the events of Vox Machina. Obviously, they raised way more money than they ever thought they would, and what was initially planned as just a few minutes of animation turned into this entire series. This obviously put the cast of Critical Role in a tough position, as now they must create an animated program that is worthy of that budget, but is true enough to the campaign story to please the hardcores, while making it accessible enough that someone who's never heard of Critical Role could watch the show and enjoy it. Now, I'm gonna be brave here and stick my neck out on a limb. The Legend of Vox Machina has, in my opinion, some of the best animated fight scenes in any medium, Western or Eastern, as well as some of the best animations and art, full stop, and I will stand by that statement. The attention to detail is staggering, the constant movement in shots is breathtaking, and just look at this art, man. Some of these frames are so detailed, and they're only on screen for a brief instant. But just look at this! Imagine the time and love and effort that went into create this one frame that was on screen for what, half a second maybe? And the fight scenes, man. When watching these, it really feels like there's no wasted moment. Every move, spell, punch, swing were all thought through and picked for a reason. It feels almost choreographed. It's fast-paced but digestible. Characters don't pull an anime and just randomly engage in 5 minutes of dialogue made fight. Attacks are sequenced quickly, back to back, every move fully animated. None of this, they are moving so fast we can't see them trick, which artists sometimes use as a shortcut so they don't have to be as detailed. This level of quality is somewhat to be expected, as Critical Role hired some of the best in the business, Titmouse, the studio which brought us the Avatar: The Last Airbender series. The show gives you a taste of that epicness pretty early on in Vox Machina's encounters with the dragon, but these Percy animation sequences are something else. Basically all of the Percy flashbacks or dream sequences are just class. From the emotions they convey, all the way to the fine artist detail, they are in total some of my favorite scenes. One of the most consistent critiques I got, which I found pretty interesting, was that many viewers didn't seem to enjoy the crudeness and at times randomness of the humor, in contrast with the seriousness of the main storyline, as well as the many themes the show touches upon. I think this is a pretty fair critique, especially for those who didn't watch the campaign. The reason the show is like this because, well, that's how the campaign was. At the end of the day, these people are amazing actors, but they're also best friends, who enjoy being silly and outlandish with one another. While Grog and Vax have a funny relationship in which they play pranks on each other, this is ultimately rooted in the fact that Liam and Travis like to bust each other's balls. I mean, who better to make crude and stupid jokes with than your best mates? It's interesting because Legend of Vox Machina does an amazing job of capturing the unique storytelling of a D&D game. D&D is random, it's silly, it's crazy, and at times it can be extremely real. But I get how after shows like Adventure Time or even Rick and Morty, both of which I love by the way, there's a section of an audience out there that's just burnt out on this humor, or maybe just doesn't like it altogether. We have to remember that D&D is improv. There's no scripts here, and the story of Legend of Vox Machina was taken from a finished D&D campaign. All its moments, battles, story beats, hell, even humor was taken from this already finished story. The show is actually very true to the moments of the campaign. Very little was changed. A lot of events were merely sped up, or order was oftentimes rearranged, in order for the story to be better adapted to 25-minute episodes. And it's this improv, combined with the randomness of dice, which can make D&D such a special vehicle for storytelling, as well as for some guaranteed hilarious moments. However, it seems this can be very hard to convey in an animated setting, especially for the many folks who have never played or really been exposed to Dungeons & Dragons. Fair enough. Oftentimes, in the campaign, things would go randomly wrong for our heroes. For example, Percy's gun seemingly breaking at random moments. This was because in the campaign, if Taliesin, the player behind Percy, were to happen to roll a number low enough, his gun could potentially break on the spot. It's little stuff like this that really gives it that D&D feel, Overall, I think Legend of Vox Machina does a brilliant job of bridging the gap, and the fact that it remains true to the source material in story as well as in feeling is one of its biggest strengths. It's funny because Legend of Vox Machina is the easiest way to get introduced and digest the Critical Role universe and the story of Campaign 1. It's actually quite impressive how well they've adapted hundreds of hours of D&D goodness into roughly 300 minutes of animated film. Yet, it still conveys the story extremely well and accurately. Big props here. As well, I've yet to talk to anyone who's watched all 12 episodes of Season 1 and says it's just outright bad. The show is good from the off, but at the same time, it continually ramps the epicness up and the stakes as it goes. A common complaint from new fans I've heard online is that the intro hook just isn't good enough. They didn't feel that buy-in from the get-go, and I can understand and empathize with that. I mean, geez, not every show can have an opening hook as good as, let's say, Attack on Titan. Some shows need 1 to 3 episodes before a viewer can really buy in. God, I'm starting to sound like a JoJo fan right now.
Just watch till season 2, guys, and it gets really good, I swear.
Unironically though, if you felt this way about the show, or maybe you watched 1 or 2 episodes and stopped, I really highly recommend you go back and watch till episode 4. Okay, yes, I know what you're saying.
But Fraud, that's 104 minutes of my life that I'll never get back.
Yes, I did the runtime math for you. Well, little Billy, sometimes in life we gotta invest a little time into things. I mean, come on now. Some of us have been waiting basically an entire lifetime for a series to finally conclude. I'm looking at you, George R. Martin. I promise you, this show is worth your time. If not for the amazing story, then at least for the beautiful art. The show is, if nothing else, pure art sex at times. So many of these frames I just want to freeze, print out, and then put that shit on my wall. Because that's what it is, art. It's very hard for me to be critical of this show, because of, well, the effect Critical Role has had on me over the last 8 years of my life. See what I did there? It's been an ever-constant thing for me, no matter what the challenges I've gone through, tough times I've faced, or even the country that I've lived in. Critical Role has been through it all with me. And the fact that the measly $10 I donated helped be a very small block in what would become this massive thing that is the Legend of Vox Machina and just Critical Role in general is really fucking cool. The show's not for everyone. I mean, no show is. It's crude and oftentimes extremely violent. It covers dark things of revenge, torture, trauma, while simultaneously exploring the ideas of love, forgiveness, and friendship. It's a story that's been over 8 years in the making and is extremely important to those who made it. Now, I could sit here and break down specific adaptation differences, story beats, and artistic choices that maybe I didn't like or agree with, but that's not what I want this review to be. Irregardless of what I would change, the show is still at least an 8 out of 10 for me. No, what I hope to do in this review is for at least one person to give The Legend of Vox Machina a chance, or maybe even a second chance. I've spent an ungodly amount of hours that I don't even want to think about following this story. So when I tell you, nameless viewer, that if you trust me, the Mr. YouTuber man, and invest an hour and a half of your life into this story, you won't regret it. I mean, the whole entire Season 1 is about roughly 5 hours of runtime, which is about how long an episode of Critical Role is. So am I really asking for that much? Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you like about The Legend of Vox Machina? What did you not? What would you change it? As always, guys, go check out some of our other Legend of Vox Machina content on screen now. I will see you in the next video. Stay safe out there. Peace, love. Adieu.